Alright, here we go then. Warwick Davis. He's a good lad, Warwick. Proper little fella, isn't he? Now, don't get me wrong, I've got nothing against short people, but it does make me wonder, right? How does he reach stuff on the top shelf? I mean, I've seen him in Star Wars and Harry Potter, and he's always doing these big epic roles, right? But I can't help but think, what's it like when he's at home? Does he have to have a step ladder to reach the biscuit tin? I mean, it's all well and good being an Ewok or a goblin, but what happens when he wants a jammy dodger? And you know what else? He's got this big, fancy career, but I bet he still has to ask for help when he wants to change a light bulb. It's mad, innit? I mean, I'm not tall by any means. But I don't have to climb on the kitchen counter just to get a packet of crisps. But, anyway, enough about Warwick and his height. He's a good actor, isn't he? But then, I suppose he'd have to be, wouldn't he? I mean, if you're that short, you've got to be good at something, haven't you? Otherwise, what's the point? And there's Ricky laughing his head off. What's so funny, Ricky? You're not much taller than Warwick yourself.
Opening square bracket. Laughs. Oh, you've got me there, mate. I suppose when you're at eye level with a garden gnome, you've got no room to talk, do you? But I'll tell ya, I've got an advantage over Warwick. At least when I'm shopping, I don't have to worry about the top shelf. I mean, I might need a bit of a reach, but I don't have to bring a stepladder with me. Imagine that, needing a stepladder to get your groceries. Now, I love Warwick, he's a great bloke, and a tremendous actor. But let's face it, his height does make him. Let's say. Unique. In fact, he could be the only actor in Hollywood who could use a dollhouse as a dressing room. But in all seriousness, it's all about perspective, isn't it? Take Karl here. Now, compared to Warwick, Karl's a giant. But compared to a giraffe, Karl's just a short, bald mank twonk. It's all relative, isn't it? So, let's not worry too much about who's taller or shorter. After all, we're all the same height laying down, aren't we? Anyway, let's get back to the show. I'm sure there's a lot more interesting things we can talk about than Warwick's ability to reach a jammy dodger. Right, Karl?
Yeah, you're right, Ricky. I mean, I've always said that being tall isn't all it's cracked up to be. I mean, look at giraffes, tallest animals on the planet, right? They've got to bend down to drink water. It's like nature played a trick on them. Like saying, here you go, have a really long neck, but now you've got to do yoga every time you're thirsty. Single quote. And then there's all the stuff high up. Birds messing on your head, getting hit by low branches. No thanks. I'll stick to my height. Not too tall, not too small. Bit like a fridge. Easy to get what you need, and nobody's asking a fridge to change a light bulb, are they? But yeah, let's move on. I've got a fact for you, Ricky. Do you know why we've got eyebrows? It's not just for show, it's to stop sweat getting in our eyes. It's like having two little hairy umbrellas on your face. Now, that's interesting, innit?
Haha. Leave it to you, Karl, to turn a conversation about height into a comparison with refrigerators and giraffes doing yoga. You've got a way with words, mate. And about the eyebrows, I knew that. I mean, I didn't just wake up one day and think, oh, these little hairy bits above my eyes must be for decoration. Then again, considering some of the things you've said, I wouldn't put it past you. You know what's also interesting? We humans have eyebrows, right? But what about dogs? They don't have eyebrows, do they? Yet they still seem to get by just fine without sweat pouring into their eyes. How do they manage that? I mean, they can't exactly carry around a little doggy handkerchief to dab their foreheads, can they? Anyway, let's get on with the show. I'm sure our listeners are on the edge of their seats waiting for your next profound observation. Go on, Karl, dazzle us with your wisdom.
Well, first off, Ricky, it's not about dazzling anyone with wisdom, is it? It's about asking simple questions. Like, why are we the only ones worried about sweat in our eyes? Now, about these dogs, right? They've got fur, haven't they? They've got it all over. Not just eyebrows. Maybe it's like a sort of built-in sweatband, keeping the sweat from their eyes. But then, you've got to wonder about bald dogs, haven't you? What happens to them? Or maybe, they just don't sweat in the same way. I mean, they're not running about doing a 9-to-5 job, are they? They're not sat in traffic, stressing out about being late for a meeting. So maybe they don't need eyebrows. And it's not just dogs. What about fish? They live underwater, don't they? So they're not gonna be sweating. But then, if they're cold-blooded, why do they live in warm water? You'd think they'd want it a bit cooler, wouldn't you? Anyway, let's get on with the show. Got a cracking tune coming up from Oasis. But first, here's a little bit of trivia for you, Ricky. Did you know that the world record for the longest eyebrows is 7.5 inches? That's longer than a lot of people's feet. Makes you think, doesn't it?
Well, Karl, I think you've outdone yourself with this one. How you managed to turn the simple topic of eyebrows into an existential crisis for dogs, fish, and even humans, is beyond me. Bald dogs, Karl. Really? Are you suggesting we start a charity for hairless dogs that can't deal with the sweat in their eyes? Give a quid for a canine sweatband, is that it? And as for fish, they're cold-blooded, Karl, not fashion-conscious. They're not choosing to live in warm water for the ambience, mate. It's about survival. They're not popping on a pair of Speedos and thinking, bit nippy today, better head to the tropical part of the ocean. Single quote. As for the world record for longest eyebrows, 7.5 inches. Dot. That's impressive. But honestly, if your eyebrows are longer than your foot, I'd say it's time to invest in a good pair of tweezers. Alright, we've got Oasis coming up next. Stay tuned, folks, and don't worry about your eyebrows. I'm sure they're just fine.
Alright, Ricky, no need to get all wound up. I'm just saying, it's a bit weird, innit? Eyebrows, I mean. What's the point of really? Just two bits of hair sat there above your eyes, doing nothing all day. And as for dogs, don't see why that's so hard to believe. I mean, if you've ever seen a bald dog, you'd know they've got it rough. Literally. No hair to block the sweat, eyes stinging all day. Sounds like a nightmare to me. If we can put a man on the moon, Surely we can sort out a tiny sweatband for Fido, right? Now, fish. You say they're not fashion conscious, but how do we know, really? Maybe there's a whole underwater catwalk we're missing out on. Might explain why they're always gawping at you with those big eyes. Maybe they're just waiting for you to throw a compliment on their scales or something. And the bloke with the 7.5-inch eyebrows, well, you've got to admire his commitment. I mean, I can barely be bothered to trim mine, let alone grow out that long. He's practically got a pair of curtains hanging over his eyes. Practical in the sun, I suppose. Anyway, enough about eyebrows. Let's get on with some music. Oasis up next, folks. Don't go plucking your eyebrows out of boredom just yet.
Alright, Karl. You've really outdone yourself this time, haven't you? Eyebrows, dogs and fish, oh my. You see, Karl, eyebrows aren't just there for us to raise them at your strange theories. They're there to keep sweat and other bits of muck out of our eyes. They're like little visors, mate. If we didn't have them, we'd be blinking away sweat every 2 minutes. And that's no way to live, is it? Now, onto dogs. Look, Karl. I love dogs as much as the next bloke. But let's be fair, they're not exactly known for their personal hygiene, are they? I mean, have you smelt one recently? It's not exactly roses and lavender. I think we'll leave the sweatbands to the tennis players, thanks very much. As for fish, well, I think you've been watching too much Finding Nemo. I mean, come on, a fish fashion show. What's next? A clam choir. A shark symphony. And by the way, Karl, fish don't have eyelids, so they're not gawping, they're just being fish. Now, the bloke with the 7.5-inch eyebrows. I agree, Karl, he's got commitment. But I wouldn't say it's a good look. To me, it's more like 2 hairy caterpillars having a race on his forehead. And not a very fast one, at that. Right, enough of this nonsense. Let's crack on with some Oasis and give our listeners a break from your unique, shall we say, take on the world. Stay tuned, folks.